Okay.
Okay.
And then
Leslie, I'll definitely have some things I'm going to use your app for this spring. That's awesome. Okay, so where do I share?
so there's a share screen button down at the green.
Oh, share screen.
Yeah, and I made you host, so you should be able to share. No
Okay.
problem.
Okay, can you see that? I'm going to make it bigger here. Okay. Is that good? All right. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite things, energy, and as it relates to our homes. So I'm going to get started. Thank you, Leslie, for having me, and thank you all for being here. I hope you will find this informative and entertaining. And my goal is that after this, you will get a home energy audit by a professional. And if I haven't convinced you to do that, then I will have failed. Real quickly, I want to talk about the organization I'm from, Metropolitan Energy Center. We're one of Kansas City's oldest non-for-profits. We're closing in on 40 years of existence. And our mission has basically been reducing the energy our region uses through transportation and our built environment. We're funded by a lot of Department of Energy money to electrify the fleets and to help spread information about energy efficiency in building performance in the built environment. I'm the Building Performance Program Manager. I was hired last year to help spur the expansion of our Energy Solutions Hub, which I'll get to here in just a second. But I have 15 years total experience in this field. And 10 of those years were spent as a residential energy efficiency specialist. And I've personally conducted hundreds of home energy audits, and additionally have helped contractors build efficient homes and multifamily homes from the ground up by offering consultation and testing services. So I'm going to keep my intro short. Let me know if you have additional questions at the end. The Energy Solutions Hub, which is the building side of Metropolitan Energy Center, is expanding. We're providing a full service resource for the community, both commercial and residential buildings. And that will include, we're going live with some new web pages next week, and that'll be the beginning of the resource. We'll continue to add and hopefully have a robust contractor list that does this work, like the Honorable Mike O'Connell, who I see here on the call as well. Learned from him as well. I'm glad to see you here, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go into, I have a couple of different sections here. I'm going to pause after one of the sections to see if there are any questions. I know we're on a time limit though, so after the pause, then, if there's anything like you have immediate need to ask something for clarification of please do so, but otherwise there'll be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation as well. So at a glance, the Department of Energy, this is the elevator speech on what a home energy assessment is. It's basically a room-to-room examination, including your basement down at the bottom and going up into an attic, perhaps if you have one. And we're using equipment such as blower door and gas leak detectors. I'm going to get into all that here momentarily. First, though, I want to talk a little bit about thermodynamics. I promise to be fast and hopefully not too snoozeworthy. When an energy specialist is talking about building performance, you're going to hear the word envelope spoken quite a bit. And the envelope of a building is the conditioned area. What are you heating and cooling with your systems, and whether it's finished or not. So I don't want a condition to equal finished. So you can have a basement that's part of your envelope that's not finished, but it's considered part of the conditioned envelope because you have ductwork, supply ductwork, and probably your furnace and air handler down there, for example. So think about as we go through this, think about your home and what you define as the envelope as we talk through what energy inspectors are doing. And I just want to go over some basics, at least they are basic, and I apologize if this is too basic for the entire audience here. But before I switched careers into this industry 15 years ago, and I would know that I didn't know that hot energy moves from hot to cold. You know, you go outside and you're like, oh, the air is making me cold. And you're like, well, no. You go outside today and the heat is leaving your body, and your body starts to use its energy stores to moderate your temperature and keep your body warm so you don't freeze to death. So think of the higher the temperature, the more the energy, and that hot temperature is always going to move towards a cooler temperature. It's important when talking about home energy audits. And there's three ways, the laws of thermodynamics are interacting with our buildings. And in no particular order, we have radiation. Obviously, the radiation from the sun is what creates life on Earth. But it also is supplemental energy, if you will. So for example, think about a sunny 70-degree day and a cloudy 70-degree day. I'm going to feel a lot hotter on a sunny 70-degree day at noon than I am a cloudy 70-degree day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because the intense radiation, the sun is also beaming down on me and creating more energy and heat as it does so. Secondly, think of the next way heat is moving is through convection. Convection is most applicable towards your forced air HVAC system, like your ductwork, in other words. And so HVAC specialists, heating and air conditioning, get the big bucks because they're doing calculations on how to convect and move all that conditioned air through your ductwork to heat and cool your home. And this illustration here on the right, I don't want that to be confusing because I just said that cold doesn't move towards heat. This is supposed to represent the wind. So, we're here to help fix your leaky, drafty house. And so this just represents the cold drafts that are coming in towards your house. And that cold draft is going to dilute the heat that's being delivered on a cold winter's day as the wind is blowing into your house. And then finally, conduction. Personally, my favorite law of thermodynamics, because you can mitigate heat loss from conduction very easily by adding insulation. Conduction is the way energy transfers through material. So again, analogy I like to use is an iron pan on the stove. When you start the burner, the handle, if it's not insulated, will still be cool to the touch. But as soon as that pan starts to get really hot, you're going to need an oven mitt to handle that handle, because it's conducting, the heat's conducting to the handle. So, and so finally, back to this idea of the envelope, the goal of a home energy auditor wants to help you, the homeowner or resident, keep your home dry, keep a consistent temperature throughout, help with make sure that you have the right humidity levels going on in your house, make sure that it's free of allergens or worse, and then make affordability a fringe benefit. So you talk about a home energy audit and how to save on the bills, but I like to say that saving on the bills is a benefit, and the rest of it is why you should get an energy audit sooner than later and not wait for incentives. But I will share about incentives as well towards the end of this. So before I am going to pause here before I go into the different aspects of a home energy audit. Does anybody have any questions on the laws of thermodynamics and an envelope and all this stuff before I get started on what we're looking for in an audit?
So in the chat, Mary,
Yes.
Tim says, I don't get the envelope analogy. Why an envelope?
Okay. Well, boundary, wall, ceiling. So, you've enveloped a conditioned building. So think of envelope as envelope. So you're trying to keep in your air that you're paying to heat and cool in your sealed home. And, I guess we're using the envelope as opposed to saying that, just think of it as your walls, floor, and roof, because an attic is part of your structure, but it may not be part of the envelope, if that makes sense, because the envelope is supposed to encapsulate the air that you're conditioning, and the attic will be outside of that conditioned envelope, if that makes sense.
It sounds like it does.
Hey, thank you for moderating the chat. I'm not looking at that, Leslie, so yeah, keep me posted. Anything else? No? Okay.
No, I think we're good to move on.
All right, so fun with energy sleuthing. I am going to talk to you about what auditors do and a few things, examples of energy loss issues. I'm not, though, going to be going on about everything that you should be thinking about. Mike and I were conversing a little bit about some of the low-hanging fruit that he points out. And I think that would be a different presentation. That's called like how to conduct your own energy audit. I'm doing what the professionals are doing, the equipment we're using, and how we're helping you, a homeowner, hire the right professional that knows what they're doing. So without further ado, first aspect of a home energy audit is that air leakage issue that I was talking about. So when a home energy auditor comes into a home, they know the science of the pressure differential in the building. And so what that means is in your house, and it gets more robust and drastic as you increase the number of floors of your building. So for example, if you rent a condo on the 3rd floor, you could be experiencing more loss of heat out through your ceiling into an attic space than a person on a 1-story building, for example. You have a pressure plane, and below that pressure plane, it's in a negative pressure. So that cold air in the winter is just flowing in. And the science of pressure differential in a home, you have 1 in equals 1 out. So for every cubic feet of air that is leaking in through a rim joist or penetration in your bottom half of your envelope, you have 1 cubic air that exhales. Think of the building as almost a living being breathing. So in other words, on a day like today, think of your home inhaling. I have 22 degrees there. I think it's more like 8 or something right now. And exhaling 70 degrees out through the top of your envelope. So negative pressure in through the basement, positive pressure out through the ceiling. And so energy auditors can quantify this with a measurement through equipment called a blower door. And we're using the blower door for this initial test to quantify how much air you're losing every hour. It's called the air changes per hour. So we're taking the test, and then we enter it in a calculation after we've also measured your home and how big it is and how much square footage and cubic feet of air you have. And we run a calculation called air changes per hour. And I tell you, a lot of the older homes in Kansas City, you're looking at 8 to 10 or more, what's called air changes per hour, which means that your inside air is being exchanged with outside air 8 or 10 times every hour. It's a lot of money being flushed into your utility bills. After we get that initial test to get the entire leakiness of your home, which is mimicked, let me just make sure I'm making myself clear. When I say air changes per hour, 8 to 10 per hour, that would be when conditions are relevant to that, which would be winter time. You know, you're not on a moderate day, you're not going to be, your home isn't turning things over as quickly. We're mimicking that cold winter day when we're running the blower door. And then after that measurement, we're running it at a lower speed to set the whole house into what's negative pressure. So we suck in air from all the cracks and crevices around your home. And then we take a look at them either with a smoke pencil, or I'd say best practice is an infrared camera. So you can actually visually show the homeowner or the resident what's happening with their envelope. So for example, here's one photo of a pair of double hung windows. That's an infrared image of inside on a winter's day, seeing the cold air, which is represented with that dark purple and lighter purple feathering around the rough opening of the window and through the sash. And an auditor is going to maybe show this to you in a report and say, hey, you need to do some caulking around those windows, or if you're planning on replacing these windows, you need to make sure you hire XYZ contractors that know how to accurately seal around a rough opening of a window while they're doing a replacement, because there is a right and a wrong way. It's not necessarily the window, it's the way they're installed. So just that's as an aside. Which leads to the second aspect of the energy audit, which is using checking for insulation in the walls. And that is usually done with an infrared camera. We're not going to go around drilling holes in people's walls. It's the only other way really to be able to see what's going on with the insulation. And there is no substitute for an infrared camera. What we're looking at here in this infrared photo on the left is an uninsulated ceiling over a conditioned living or dining room. And I know this because the ceiling joists are warmer than the cavities, which are ice cold, due to a lack of insulation. Now, if this is an attic where I can go in and see that with my own two eyes, great, I'll do that. But perhaps this is a home with an extra attic space that doesn't have access, and I wouldn't be able to get into this and verify insulation, no insulation unless I had the camera. The infrared camera is key. And by the way, if I saw this in somebody's house, be like, insulate that immediately. That is, you're losing hundreds of dollars a year with that lack of insulation. And then, you know, there's also going to be cases where, okay, most of your envelope is insulated. That's what we're looking at right here. We're looking at walls that have are mostly insulated with some gaps of perhaps the bat wasn't installed correctly. In the Kansas City area, and you know, Mike might have more specific details on this, but roughly for the last 30 years, Kansas City area has been using 30 to 40 what's called a craft-based fiberglass bat. And depending on who did it, that's going to be, some are going to be better installed than others. And as the home ages and, you know, we have improvements and things move around, you're going to start to see perhaps some bats falling down and some holes in the wall. This is not necessarily something that I'd say, okay, well, you should probably go and fix that insulation in the wall. Perhaps it's not something you should worry about if there's just a few, but I'm looking in this picture at the top left-hand corner of this photo and seeing gaps in the insulation in the ceiling as well, and very cold spots. That could be a health issue, a health and durability issue. And that if that is a bare drywall above your head and you have a warm air thermostat going up into a cold, humid attic, you're all of a sudden dealing with perhaps a condensation issue because of the warm air meeting the cold on that drywall and getting condensation in the attic and then getting mold growth in the attic. And now you're talking about health issues. Just as an aside, MEC is partnering with Children's Mercy Hospital's Healthy Home Department to do a major study on to see if we can get more information on how many children, asthma and health issues are connected to just this, poor energy issues and mold growth and things like this in the home. Which leads me talking about the attic, aspect 3, which is a thorough attic inspection. The top of the envelope can be the biggest loss of energy. This is oftentimes, this is where you can see ductwork. We have in the Midwest, we have lots of ductwork in the attic. And then other surprising fun sleuthing can be had as you meet all the residential spiders. These 3 pictures that I'm representing is just examples. The bottom one is an under-insulated attic besides seeing ductwork. You can see the ceiling joists. You don't have enough insulation in your attic. You can see it's spotty. You know, a lot of times there's work that's been done up there, and maybe some other contractor that doesn't know building science will go up and dig through the insulation and just leave it so you have bare spots. The picture on the top left is a duct riser going up into the attic that's completely unsealed. And it's just like having a window open in your house. lets the air just out through your attic. And then the picture in the top right is a picture of a supply duct whose insulation has been split. And not only is that an energy loss issue, it's going to impact your comfort in your room, wherever this ductwork is going. And again, could be a condensation issue, as if you have hot or cold air in that duct and your attic is the exact opposite with 60-degree temperature difference, you're going to potentially have mold. And so that leads to aspect number 4, which is the health and safety checks of a home energy audit. This matters a lot. We have gas burning appliances in our homes, most of us. It goes back to the big buzz in the industry is going all electric. And that's a whole different story that we can talk about another time or at the end of this. But for now, majority of our homes right now are, especially single family, are heated by natural gas. And a lot of us also have natural gas burning water heaters and stovetops. And it's really important as auditors come in and tell you all the places you should seal up your envelope, like the basement rim joist, around rough openings around windows, whole house attic fans, like we were talking about earlier with you, Leslie. We're telling you to seal these things up. Well, we need to make sure that we're not introducing a higher concentration of carbon monoxide as the drafts are get mitigated. Well, now we need to make sure that the air inside the home is healthy as we air seal the home. And just an example here, this is not my photo, but this is from an auditor's House of Horrors notebook. An HVAC return right next to a natural gas burning water heater with an open flue cap. So this flue sitting on top of the water heater, you have to test that for what's called spillage. If air is spilling out and not just going all the way up the flue, and this flue is not to code. You can see it, the picture, it looks like it actually declines once it goes up, and the ductwork is arching over the entire water heater. Dollars to donuts, that's a health issue where you might have a return sucking in some carbon monoxide from this gas burning appliance. As auditors, we're checking for this, but we're also probably going to put something like this in the report and say, get somebody in there right now and fix this problem, because this is not good for you or your family's health. Our 5th aspect of an energy audit is the exterior inspection. And this is, again, to get those measurements so we can accurately calculate that air changes per hour measurement I was telling you about. And then also produce pictures outside that might be causing water issues. So I talked about making sure your house is dry with low relative humidity. That'll come from a bad rain with a disconnected downspout, like you see right there. It's just going to dump water that'll leak into your basement, potentially cause mold and health issues, and then durability issues too. Who wants a damp, moldering basement that is helping deteriorate your potentially masonry foundation wall. Most of the water issues in your basement can be mitigated by just making sure your gutters are clean, your downspouts are connected. And again, this is just an example of one of the things where we see when we do our exterior inspection. And then finally, the aspect is the report. This is for you, the homeowner, the fun part where you get to see all the pretty digital and infrared photos that we took, and then the payback report. Yay! So we take, we plug our findings into an energy model, and we do a simple payback calculation. This is not taken into, the equation is not taking inflation, rate increases, or anything else into. We're just taking simple payback of today's energy utility rates and then running it just through a calculation that takes what's the cost of the energy upgrade, what is it going to pay you back on your home's bills, and then what you can expect your rate on return, and then how quickly that improvement's going to pay for itself. These paybacks are really long and much longer than I've seen it. This is just an example report that I pulled off the web. The Energy Star windows usually pay back in 30 years. So it's why we don't recommend window replacements right off the bat, unless they're really old and leaky. But just know that the fastest rate of return is air sealing and insulation, and then HVAC equipment usually. Okay, so what if I have the will, but not the capital on hand? Is there any help out there for me? Right now, we do have some incentives, but they're not great. And they're also all on the Missouri side, with the exception of a renewable energy tax credit, which us auditors usually don't get into energy generation. We get into energy conservation. But know that there, if you're interested, if you have a south-facing sunny roof, and after you get an energy audit and improve your envelope, and then you want to do renewable, check it out. There's a tax credit for it. Our equipment tax credits for primary residences just expired at the end of 2021, but there's a whole lot of rebate incentives in that Build Back Better bill that is stalled. So if you want more money for you and your friends, call your federal representatives and ask them to pressure the Senate to pass the Build Back Better bill. In Missouri, we have some really good rebates for the Evergy Inspire utility areas. We have standard rebates per kilowatt hour, or just set payback for a set rebate for HVAC equipment. And then there's also a new pilot program in Missouri called Pay As You Save. I'm going to get into both of these here now. So standard rebate for Evergy Inspire Missouri customers. Not going to reinvent the wheel, so I just put a link here to go over this. These are set amounts for your equipment. So the higher the SEER rating, the more efficient and the more money you'll get if you replace your HVAC. Note that you're going to want to seek out one of their contractors, and they'll do an assessment of your equipment at the least, and then write in that rebate, and so you can have it all taken care of through, they usually do the paperwork for you. There are also per kilowatt or per square foot, rebates for doing some air sealing and insulating. Again, you'll want to have one of their approved contractors do the work, and contact them before you move on getting the work done, to make sure that you're able to get these rebates. Because after the fact, a lot of times if you don't use a contractor, you won't be, you can't apply for it. And they do have some maximum incentives. Again, the federal rebate should be more robust once that comes through, and I'm optimistic it will. The pay as you save, known as pays, is in pilot right now for Evergy, Missouri customers. This is a low interest loan from the utility. So basically you fill out an interest form, you get a no obligation energy assessment. So somebody, and you can also receive some free energy saving products like light bulbs and power strips and things like that when you apply for the program. They'll come in and do, an authorized contractor will come in and do a walkthrough and then give you a report on what your best return on investment will be. You can then, for anything that has a simple payback of 12 years or less, you can then get it funded through your energy bill. Evergy will front the money, and then your meter will be tied to a payback program. But your bill should not change, or even it might still drop a little bit. So the idea behind that is pay for those improvements through, the savings that you're going to realize by adding insulation and air sealing. And then the loan repayment will sort of come in and fill that gap that you've just created by reducing your energy bills. And you move out of that home, you sell the home, you tell the next owner, because then again, that loan is going to continue to be paid back on the meter. It doesn't follow the resident out of the house. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a real high level explanation there. And we've come to the end. I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. Thank you for listening. And let me know what is still confusing, not clear, or other questions, please.
Well, I have one, Mary. If you decide you want to get an energy audit, how can you tell you're getting a good energy auditor? Like what should you look for? What kind of fees should you expect to pay? Those sorts of things.
That's a great question. So there's one good one here on the call, Mike. There you go. Free plug. And just interview them. Short interview on the phone. Ask them how many energy audits they've done, how long they've been in the business, what type of equipment do they use, is infrared included in the cost, and questions like that. Maybe ask to see a sample audit report. You could do that. I think actually that could be really, if they're willing to share an audit report with you, or two, call at least 3, just like you do any contractor, get bids. I had a discussion with a longtime energy auditor in the city, which is, I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'll say it, Green Cat also does energy audits. And he said that they charge out of pocket now a little over $300 for a home energy audit. But they, like many other places, and Mike, I don't know if you want to speak to this really briefly, if you mind, Leslie, if he jumps in, but some companies use it as a loss leader. So they'll say, okay, the audit is $350 unless you hire us to insulate your attic after we do the audit, and then we'll absorb that into the bill for energy insulating. Mike, do you have any comments on that cost? Or
How do I get on here?
you're talking, we can
Oh,
hear
I
you.
am?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Well, one of the things I see here, nobody wants to deal with some of the inexpensive, practical things initially. Forget doing, as a blower door and everything, but about sealing ductwork or redirecting vents and that sort of thing. The things that are practical. Can you hear me? Hear me?
Yes.
Practical things that you can do immediately before people walk out the door that can make immediate difference. Little cheap, inexpensive things, or the different style vents, for example. For example, never enough returns, and I always get them at least temporarily to leave the basement door open, the furnace room door open, and immediately it starts making a difference because there's never enough returns.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sure. And those are some good tips. I think
Yeah.
those as like hiring a professional, short answer Leslie, is it starts at 300 and might go up from there if you have a big place in Leawood or Mission Hills.
The problem is when they get to do if they come and insulate the attic, you don't always know that they're doing quality work.
Mike, that's a good point. I do want to add that a professional auditor should come back and QC your work.
Exactly.
Of the contractor. So I would add that to your list of questions when you're interviewing an auditor. Ask them if they come back and take a look at whatever work that's done with the contractors that they're hiring. Because I'm going to want to come back and maybe even do another blower door test if you've done an extensive air sealing to make sure that the contractor has air sealed everything that he or she has said. So good question, good point. What else? What other questions?
Got one in the chat. Could you also mention the distinction between air sealing and insulation? Some insulation contractors don't focus on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, you have air barriers and you have insulation, and the two don't necessarily, equal each other. So best analogy would be again, going outside and wearing a fleece, but you still feel cold if it's windy. Well, you put on that windbreaker and all of a sudden you've broken that wind. Oh God. Anyway, all of a sudden you've blocked that wind and created an air barrier from entering your home. So a real life example in the home is your rim joist. Do you here has an unfinished basement where you have the exposed rim joist sitting on your foundation wall? So you have sill plate, rim joist, top plate, and around in that section, a lot of folks have cut craft face fiberglass bats, and they've stuffed them into that cavity thinking that they've both insulated and sealed up that rim joist cavity in their basement. Well, if you have one of those in your home, you've had it up there a while, go down your basement and pull that fiberglass out from that cavity, and I bet you're going to see dirt. What you have there is maybe a little insulation, but a lot of just an air filter that's filtering out some of the dirt that's coming in through your rim joist. What you want is an air seal, which is water-based caulk, foam insulation, spray foam insulation, rigid foam board insulation. We used to do in-home workshops where we showed people how to insulate and air seal their rim joists on their own, which is basically getting blue board at the extruded polystyrene or pink board, depending, the color depends on how thick it is and how much R value there is, and then put on one of your handy air filter masks that we all have now, and hopefully N95 mask, and grab your can of foam and start doing a picture frame cut to fit, picture frame the foam around your rim joist, and now you have insulation that is also an air seal. So I hope I've answered that question, because it does. There's air barriers and there's insulation, and they're not exactly equal to both. Fiberglass without the craft face bats sealing the cavity very well and installed great is not an air barrier. It's just insulation, and that insulation is less effective without that air barrier to stop the wind.
We have a couple more questions in here. So what happens if the auditor comes back and the work done by the contractor isn't acceptable?
Well, you have a couple of options. Back in the day when we had robust rebates that were happening throughout the entire metro area, programs, what the programs that we were funding, getting the rebates were being funded through, would not give the rebate to the contractor until the home energy auditor verified that the work was done correctly. Some of that power now has gone away with the programs don't exist anymore. Hopefully that will come back as the federal government passes, tax rebates and such. It's maybe you pay the contractor half upon completion or 2/3 and say, hey, as soon as my auditor comes back and QCs and make sure that the work is done correctly, I'll pay you the rest. That's kind of a deal you'll have to make with the contractor ahead of time and right now. So that would be my only suggestion for a time, or hire somebody that you have fully recommended is very ethical and wants your recommendation online instead of a criticism, even if you have paid the whole bill, and tell them that the auditor said XYZ wasn't done correctly and that they need to come back to do it.
So I might have a barking dog.
Okay. I like dogs.
But the key is to make that, have that conversation up front with the contractor, right?
Yeah. I would tell them that, hey, auditor wants to come back. Mary wants to come back and run another blower doors and do some QC checks. And so how do you address issues that they might see? Ask that question.
And is that QC part of the initial fee that you pay the auditor?
Again, I would ask that to the auditor. Some it's just automatic. That's in there, what's included in an audit. And if you don't see that return visit included in their promotional materials on what's included in an audit, I would ask them that question.
And then Rob asks, do home energy auditors around the KC Metro provide a home energy score per the Department of Energy scoring guidelines?
I don't know the answer to that question. Now, the Department of Energy has an Energy Star score that they apply to commercial buildings, which we're using to measure commercial buildings' energy use. And I'll have to get back to Rob Kraft to answer that question completely, because I don't know what energy auditors are using that score for their. I didn't use it when I was doing home energy audits, but I've been out of the energy audit service field for 4 years. So
I'm curious if anyone on the call has actually had an energy audit done or knows someone who has. Feel free to unmute. I guess that's why everybody's here today.
Well, I will just speak up real quick and say that, hi, everyone, this is Miriam. I've worked with Leslie before on some other projects, and I'm the manager of transportation over at MEC. So I'm pretty new to the building side, and I learned a lot today. And I'm definitely looking into how can I think about some of these things as a renter. But, I used to work with the state of Missouri and worked a lot with people over in the weatherization program for Department of Natural Resources. And the home weatherization program is run by the local community action agencies for low income residents. And I worked with some people who conducted these energy audits and, talked about how much it can save folks. And so I did meet a lot of people who went through that program and had really positive experiences to share. And even a lot of those were smaller residential homes, trailers, duplexes. So I know it can make a really big difference, even with small improvements in a small house.
awesome. Thanks, Miriam.
Thank you so much for sharing. I learned so much.
Oh, awesome.
So Tim is wondering if you all at MEC have had an energy audit at your space that you use.
Well, that's an awesome opportunity to talk about Project Living Proof, which is our open home. Where in the time of COVID, we ask you to schedule an appointment. But David Albrecht, who manages our Project Living Proof on Emmanuel Cleaver Parkway, just west of Troost. Yes, it's had an audit and it's been improved, so we can show you what an energy efficient home looks like. As far as our office space, we are officing out of Plexpod in Westport in that cooperative office building. And it's been highly renovated and fairly new space. And we just have a very small part of it. So
Yeah, and I believe BNIM was the architect there, and
yes.
the B is Bob Berkebile, and he is a world-renowned green building expert. He's spoken all over the world. So I'm assuming that was probably integrated there.
Yeah, yeah. His protege, Jeremy Mole, is still at BNIM, and this is an issue close to his heart as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I know Jeremy. Okay, we have about 5 more minutes. Does anybody have any more questions or just thoughts? Like, is anyone thinking that they might go ahead and get an energy audit, or at least start looking into one?
Oh, I hope I haven't failed.
Well, I know that there are going to be people who are, I mean, like, I know Antonio lives in an apartment, and you know, so there may be some attendees who are limited based on where they live.
Yeah. Well, and the PAYS program, which hopefully will come to Kansas, will be out of the pilot stage in Missouri and come to Kansas in 2023, could be used for by renters. You know, you just have to talk to the owner of the property, and that it's tied to the space. I would highly recommend having that conversation if you're a renter about that PAYS program.
So I was talking to someone earlier who is renting in Missouri, and she has a slumlord, absentee slumlord, terrible energy efficiency, and she can't get them to respond and cooperate with these, you know, funded opportunities. Is there any recourse for a renter if that's the case?
There are KC tenants passed a tenant's bill of rights, and that information is supposed to be available. They're trying to get that information available before you rent. And as far as they've opened up, I think, some legal language that there would be a recourse, but I need to answer that, get back and follow up that answer as well.
Okay.
So,
And then Tim
Matt,
has,
should I just send that to you, Leslie, and you can share it with this group?
yeah. And Tim, I mean, just so you know, it is fairly common that the laws are pretty landlord friendly in Missouri. So I would say it's pretty hard, although Miriam has said that she filed a complaint with the City of Independence, and she got a new roof out of it, which is amazing. So that's awesome. And yeah. And so, I mean, kind of back to Mary's suggestion about advocating, you know, it's not just on the federal level, but on the state level as well. Tim is asking if there's been any suggested legislation to require landlords to have an energy audit.
There is language we're moving on, that's at least on the commercial building side. And on this is something I should mention. MEC is contracted with the City of Kansas City, Missouri to do the benchmarking for all the commercial buildings over 50,000 square feet. That definition includes multifamily homes, you know, so large tenant buildings. And that'll give you recourse. So they're supposed to go in, enter their utility bills, and if that benchmark information shows that they're highly inefficient, you can I'll have to get back to you on a legal recourse, but it'll at least, there'll be the information there publicly that the building is falling way short of an efficient building. You know, unfortunately, the system is, you pay the rent to the landlord and you pay the bills directly to the utility. And until that system changes, it's tough. But we at MEC are also working to try to get that language more tenant friendly. And I'll follow up on
Okay.
some of the specifics regarding that, Leslie.
We just have a little under a minute, so I wanted to see if there was any website or other resource, Mary, that you might refer people to learn more about energy audits, you know, if they
The
have.
Department of Energy has a great website for both commercial and residential homes with best practices and information on what you can do in your home too for a self walkthrough.
Okay, and we're at time, but I just want to let everybody know we will have another lunch and learn at the end of March 30th. We're gonna have Hillary Noonan come talk to us about getting your garden ready, get your soil ready so you can grow stuff this spring and summer. So stay tuned for that. That will be coming out and soon. And that is our time for today. And I thank so much, Mary
Thanks,
English with the Metropolitan Energy Center. This has been great and informative, and I know I'm going to be getting started on my research more. So thank you all for attending, and we'll follow up with the recording and the slides.
Thank you for having me. I'll follow up with that info, Leslie.
Okay, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mary